Okay, we are making a mandala. If I zoom out, you can see just how lovely this is going to be. We started with a triangle, and then we transferred the image on into this radial design. And at this point, all my students should have written down this happy little code that represented gray for G, WC for white with color, BC for black with color, P for pure, W for mostly white, and I think that makes 5 of them all together. So we should be having 5 values, and you can see how that matches up to the color itself. So we are going to have in every single triangle, it's going to have the same values. Here's some dried up paint from my last one. Make sure you have a cup of water. I like to have a fat brush and a moderately skinny brush so I can use area and make little tiny details with this, and a paper towel, because if my paintbrushes are too wet, this is going to make issues. So I have little codes on the side of mine that all my students should have. It has the letter B for blue, BV for blue violet, V for violet, RV for red violet, R for red, red orange, RO, O for orange, YO for yellow orange, Y for yellow, YG for yellow green, there it is, G for green, and last BG for blue green. And here's the color wheel. You can research that, but this is what we were going by. We're starting with our primary colors. I'm working on yellow, which is the last of my primary color. Hopefully we are going to get this nice and neat. So I go into the triangle that I have my code for yellow. I'm following my little mixing grid here. Let me zoom out so we can see all the colors. So I'm going to start mixing. I like to start with the pure color so I know what's going to be. It's not tainted by the white or the black, and I am rubbing my brush on the front and on the back side, pushing it so all my bristles are filled, and I am going to go into the area that says P for pure color in my code. So I'm pulling the brush along and making sure it's laying flat paint, not getting goopy paint. This big brush is nice. I can get little tiny details since it's a flat brush. I can get into those corners just by laying the brush flat and pulling it. I'm not going all psychotic all over the place like this. So if your paint is coming on too thin, it is transparent, maybe it's too watery, maybe you have water in your brush, and you need to dry it off with a paper towel. Here's my other P section on my triangle, matching up my values. I usually start in the middle first to spread out the color. Go around the edge, pull it in, go in a circle, not a circle, an arch. This part gets kind of boring when I'm trying to fill things in for my students, but I find it relaxing. And in the areas where my paint is kind of sticking up nice and thick, I am going to pull it into my arch so I don't have that drying off fat. Smoothing it down. You only have one more small section of pure color. Rotate your paper as needed so you can get the angles that you are working on. You don't have to just work with it in one direction. We're going to be going over our graphite lines with marker, some permanent marker, and to make this look like a stained glass window for our color wheel. For now, we're just doing our primary colors. Next, we'll move on to secondary, and then we'll go to tertiary. All right, my next step is I'm going to make my mostly white one. I just put a little bit of yellow into my big glob of white. It's not much bigger than a quarter. Spinning the brush around and using the big boy brush to mix all this, and not the little one. Little one's for details. Making sure I don't have any streaks. Twirling it, flipping my brush, rotating it. Not getting my little disposable paint palette anywhere else. My students are using this disposable paint palette, so we don't have to worry about Mrs. Bill getting all upsetty spaghetti when the kids don't clean the paint palettes. My life is better. Okay, so this is going in the areas that say W, the most bright areas. And it has to have this contrast. So I don't want it to look the same as my yellow. So as you can see, I wiped off some of the paint that was on my brush. I didn't want it to be too globby when I went over my little areas of color here. My paint is coming on too thick. So I'm going to use my smaller brush to get in this corner and spread out my paint nice and smooth. I'm not going back and forth with my brush. I'm not flipping it over, pulling it slowly to get those straight edges and to have it not sticking up. My paint sticking up rather. If you go over the lines a little bit, that's going to be okay. We're going to put marker over it. But we're hoping for a consistent color. It's not really coming across on the video as much because it is so bright and pale. There's so much white added to it. Because yellow is such a vibrant color, adding white to it is kind of hard because it just looks the same for some people. So I'm flipping my brush and pulling that paint that was already loaded onto the other side. Making sure it's laying pretty flat so it dries nice and evenly. Alright, my white areas. I got 2 more bright white areas for these arches. In my design, I tried to have no 2 values of the same color touching each other, so it would be easier for me to see when I started to do the line part of my project. But some of my students made a whole section all the same value and then made sure that they could see their lines under it still, so it was visible. They did that so it could have a value going from light to dark. They did all their dark values at the bottom and all their light values at the top. That was nice. Any more just bright white areas? Nope, I think it just had these 3 sections. So now what I'm going to do, I'm not going to just let this brush rest with paint on it. I'm going to stick it in my cup of water and swirl it around, and I'm going to dry it so that I'm going to clean it between things. I don't want the paint to dry on this brush, and if the tip of it comes off just like it does, it goes back on. It's not that hard. It's not broken. Okay, so I am going to take my yellow, and I'm going to mix just a little bit into this mostly white so that it is a different value. It's not as bright white and it's not as pure yellow. And I'm stirring it around. The next step is I'm going to add just a touch of black into this so that I can make a gray area. Twirling that brush, making sure it's not marbleizing, that I don't have swirls of color. It's all the same value of yellow and white. I'm going to scrape some of the excess paint off of my brush so that I can paint with ease. Applying the paint to my brush, looking at my little code. This is WC, so that means it has white with color. The W stood for mostly white, just a lot of white paint. So I'm using this big brush so I can make even strokes of paint so it's laying down nice and flat. I'm flipping the brush as I apply the paint so all the paint that gets pushed to one side of my brush gets sent to the next side, and I can just flip it over and use that. It's all piling up on one side of the brush there, you can see it. And so I'm going to flip it over and use that. Go slow. I like this. And let me see where else I have WC. These little areas here that will probably need a small brush, so since I'm not using this anymore, mix it so the acrylic paint doesn't dry and ruin my brush. Our brushes, we're sharing. So when I do a circle, I usually make an X first, and then I work on the edges. The X helps me get a lot of surface covered. Oh, you can't see what I was doing, my bad. did an X with my paintbrush like that. And then you can keep on going around the edges. So I filled in a circle pretty quick and evenly. Applying more paint, going back and forth with my brush, flipping it over. There's the X. So it covered a lot of space really fast. You can just pull it slowly to make that curve. You can't go all the way around in a circle. Just doing half arches. Boom. Now I just got to make my gray. I'm going to use my big brush for that, for mixing. Again, cleaning my brush as I go because I'm not a fool. I've ruined brushes before. Squeeze off the paintbrushes, make that handle clean so your life is easier. It's not completely clean, it still has yellow in it, and that's fine because I'm going to use that yellow. I'm going to put a little tiny dot of black in this. Swirl it all around. See, it's super streaky, so I have to keep on flipping my brush around. Twirling it and grabbing all the paint from everywhere, making sure I have the same consistency of this gray, muted yellow. Now, a lot of my kiddos really hate adding the black to the yellow because they think it looks like puke. I agree. I mean, never had my puke look this way, but whatever. Okay, so now I'm looking at my gray section, these larger gray areas. So I made sure that I had enough gray paint to cover up this area because in my last section, I didn't have enough paint, and so I had to remix it. It was really hard to match that color. So this is still pretty light, but it is muted a little bit. And it will dry a little differently. It will look a little bit darker, but I like how not dark it is. And if I don't like it later, you can go over it again with acrylic because acrylic is pretty opaque as long as your paintbrush isn't wet. So I'm trying to get this gorp. You can see that. I'm just going to brush it down really slowly and pray I don't mess up. But if I do, we're going to paint these areas black later. So it doesn't matter if I get on the lines a little bit. You can see I left that part blank because I'm going to use my skinnier brush. But I don't want to have to wash my brush and dry it off in those areas. So I'm getting the space done that is the same value of yellow. So I don't have to waste my time planning ahead. I'm slow to get this arch. Flipping my brush, I'm wiping some excess paint off because it's just piling up so much. I'm going to pull it in really slow to make sure my arch looks good. Where else do I have? Just a gray section. Down here, my little flower part. It's going to be real cute. So I'm putting my paint down with my big brush in the areas I know I can. I'm going to go back later with it. Now I'm done with my big brush. I'm washing it off. Don't want to ruin my life. Bell's about to ring and my kids are about to come in. So if it starts to get noisy, just know this is the life of a teacher. Never enough time. Never enough time. That's okay. Whatever. Ooh, so I had too much paint on it right away from the start. I got stressed that my kids were going to come in as well. That's a good class. This project is for an intro to 2D class. And it will be to help mix colors, learn the color theory, doing radial design, all that fun art stuff. I'm so close to being done. I'm just not going to make it by the time the bell rings. Oh, got paint all over here on my hands, and I didn't want to set it down. So I'm going to rotate my paper so I can get at this area a little bit easier. Excuse me, I have the hiccups all of a sudden. Okay. Today, I was so tired that I spilled some of my coffee because I forgot to put my coffee cup under my Keurig. And I pressed go while I was making copies. Just got super distracted. even though we had yesterday off for election day. Oh well. I have more coffee. Making sure everything is smooth. Okay, any more gray sections? Oh, the bottom one. Bloop. There's that bell. And then my kids are going to come out and be like, what you doing? Okay, almost done. So close. Right. Now, washing this brush off, drying it off because I'm going to make my color that has black in it, my shade. When I added white, that was my tint, T-I-N-T. And here we go. I'm going to make my shade of yellow. I'm going to just take a little bit of black on the corner of my brush. I'm going to twirl it in because it gets dark really fast. Spinning my brush around, getting rid of that marbleization. I'm going to add just a little bit more. Here they come. Had too much on that. Okay. I'm recording a video for the YouTube for my intro class. Mm-hmm.
Bill, you have cough drops.
Do you have cough drops? Or just that?
Oh my god.
We're almost done. I think this needs to be darker. I'm gonna add just a little bit more black. Making sure it's not getting mixed in with my white on here. Yeah, that looks better.
Oh.
Hi. Welcome. I wanted it to be a little darker so that it could match the rest of my project. There's some water there on my paper. So I'm gonna fix that. Yeah, it looks more contrast. So I'm trying to add. I'm gonna have to go over this again so I don't have streaks since it's wet while I'm still applying the paint. Oh, I still got my triangle to do. And my hair just almost got all up in that paint. It's okay if you get over the lines. We're going to paint over.
Chase Johnson, please report to PSO. Chase Johnson, please report to PSO.
Hi, Miss Bill.
Hi, I'm making a video.
Cool. Miss Bill, I have a big question. Oh. What's going on?
I'm making a video for my YouTube for all my students who are have been absent and they're going to ask me over and over again, how do we do this project?
Are you gonna do like a voiceover?
This is my voiceover. I'm just live streaming all my craziness. I told the internet about my coffee spill problem this morning, and it was cute. And yeah, now I got to use my little brush, making sure that I'm rinsing it off and drying it off in between, so that my color is still opaque and not transparent. And I'm almost done, and then I can actually get to teaching my drawing one class, which is a lovely group of children.
Can I go to rescue to do a test? Because if I don't do it now, I can't
Yeah.
do it ever, and then I get it
Go ahead.
class.
The whole internet's gonna hear that.
Well, it's okay.
That's okay.
It's an easy test, though.
That's okay. It's okay.
Doesn't matter. It's fun for people to see what this is like. I got out of the line a little bit, and that's okay. Because we're gonna go over it in marker later. Got out because I think this brush is a little hairy.
Tired.
So I'm getting shaky from that caffeine. I'll go over it again because it looks streaky and stupid.
Bill.
Hi.
Oh, do I have to wait?
day?
It was a moon day.
Today's a maroon day. I have you in class on white days.
Yeah, I know. That's why.
Yep. So get to your white day class. Goodbye.
Is it like
Yes. We haven't talked about this in our house because my dad likes to
Well, that's the bell. Just in time.
So.
Okay. Gonna zoom out so we can compare all of this. And I've got my primary colors done. Oh gosh, I hope that this still recorded even though my computer went to sleep. Yes, it did. All right, that took me like 20 minutes to get set up and explain it. Primary colors done. Oh geez.